You got it right, my surname. All right. My topic for today is understanding the partition of India through cuisine. Since I'm working on partition, so I'll try to trace the effects of partition on the present day lives of people, migrants and their subsequent generations in India, and how partition of the Indian subcontinent has to be seen not as an event in history, but a still evolving process whose legacies can still be seen. Partition, the division of British India into the two separate states of India and Pakistan on August 15, 1947, was the cost that had to be paid for independence from nearly 2 centuries of British rule. The partition of the Indian subcontinent led to one of the greatest human migrations in history and impacted the lives of millions of people who were forcibly uprooted from their homes on both sides of the border. Partition's legacies continue to bear upon the lives of the subsequent generations of partition victims, who, as Priya Kumar argues, while not physically present in 1947, have had their subjectivities shaped by the memories of partition. My talk today is an attempt to examine the partition narrative through the lens of food and cuisine. I explored the culinary heritage of the undivided Punjab province of the Indian subcontinent that was a part of the British Empire. I show how the cuisine and culinary practices of Punjab, influenced by the colonial rulers, evolved and transformed as the British Raj set roots in the Indian subcontinent. I also examine the assimilation of Indian food into British culture that led to the birth of the Anglo Indian cuisine. Finally, I show how, for the Punjabi migrant community in India, uprooted from their ancestral homelands in Pakistan, food and preservation of culinary practices became an important means for upholding the memory of the homelands left behind. Historians have elaborated on the devastating effects colonization had on indigenous societies and cultures. While the study of the conquest has generally focused on social, political, economic changes, the matter of food is rarely discussed. Yet, food was a principal agency of colonization. As the British ruled, local dishes got influenced by colonial rulers. Lahori ande chole made with a twist of the addition of egg. Bharwa karele rolled out with a filling of minced meat bear witness to centuries of successful colonization. The same holds true for Shami kebab tuning up to the tastes of meat cutlet or Nargisi kofta synchronizing with the British Scottish egg. The anglicization of curries and the transformation of chutney is especially notable in its use of vinegar and the focus on tart fruits like green apples and berries. The Scottish soldiers posted in India and the English wives of civil servants adapted Indian foods to suit British tastes. Reflecting on notions of food colonialism and culinary imperialism, historian Uma Narayan explains eating Indian food was, in a sense, eating India, the imaginary India, whose allure was necessary to provoke an imperial interest in incorporating this jewel into the British crown. As the British Raj flourished, the English trained the Indian cooks, the Khansamas, to innovate new dishes, the Anglo-Indian cuisine, which combined the flavors of India with those of Pakistan, those of Britain. Anglo-Indian cuisine, with its quaint names like railway mutton curry, grandma's country captain, the dark bungalow curry, Calcutta cutlets, fish category, they're a distinct throwback to the legacies of the British Empire. More than 70 years on, the British have gone, but the exquisite private clubs in India remain the flag bearers of the Raj era. Club food refers to the Anglo Indian culinary repertoire, served in country clubs throughout the country. Roast, stews, bakes, bacon, mince pies, puddings, mulligatawny soup, the so called remains of the British colonization. These dishes were adapted to the metropolitan tables of the Indian army officers, who had been anglicized and preferred these items over Indian food. The oldest known cafe from this era is Leopold's Cafe in South Bombay, now Mumbai. The large scale popularization of the Anglo Indian food is entirely traceable to the conquest and process of British colonization of the Indian subcontinent, as is the cultural social significance attached to such consumption. Finally, I wish to bring to light the preservation of food and culinary practices by the Punjabi migrants who were uprooted from their homelands in the Saraiki region of West Punjab and Northwest Frontier Province in Pakistan and were forced to rebuild their lives in various parts of India. Taking off from Rhonda Brulet and Michael Jobin's idea of edible identities, I examine ways in which the Punjabi migrants from the Saraiki region of undivided Punjab in Pakistan used food to create identity claims of cultural heritage. I also show how the specific cuisines and quote unquote alien culinary practices of the migrants enabled their construction as strangers in the lands of their arrival, because these food practices were seen as inferior, uncivilized, and stigmatized by the local populations. The migrants brought with them clay ovens, the sanja chulas, which were an important feature of community life and could be found in several neighborhoods in the years following partition. The attachment to the homelands left behind was articulated chiefly through preservation of cuisines specific to the Saraiki homelands, like son halwa, rali mili sabzi, doli ki roti, mukund vadis, etc. The quote unquote empire writes back through the recreation of these cuisines to uphold and preserve the memory of the homeland. In Delhi, one can find small eateries in Rajendra Nagar, Moti Nagar, and Multani Dhanda area in Paharganj, serving mot chawal, soya chap, til shakri, mot kachori, delicacies that Multan in Pakistan boasts of. Delhi's alien food was a daily reminder of the migrants' ruthlessness. As they yearned for what their palates were accustomed to, many small-time eateries turned into successful food enterprises set up by the migrants in India. The historic capital city is a witness to many such establishments. The Embassy Hotel in Connaught Place, Pindi at Pandara Road, Kakeda Hotel, Moti Mahal, to name a few. Attempts at recreation are being made by second and third generation migrants who inherited the trauma of partition through what Marion Hirsch terms quote unquote post memory. The famous home chef Sherry Malhotra treats audience at her pop-ups to food and tales from undivided Punjab that dates back to the kitchens of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Food inspired by the streets of Lahore, Karachi, and Peshawar in Pakistan. The sisters Ridhu and Vanshika Bhatia, whose family had migrated from the Bannu district in Pakistan to India, are trying to revive the Bannuwal cuisine at the Leh Meridian in Gurgaon. The British had built a walled city in Bannu, and the limited availability of ingredients within the walled city, along with the aridity of the region, impacted the Bannuwal cuisine. For the sisters, the preparation and consumption of cuisines like chole burke or man, which is an evening snack, or pickles and preserves, help identify and anchor them in places they had to adopt as their new homes. As the Saraiki migrants from West Punjab and Northwest Frontier Province tried to recreate their ethnic identities in India, by the reenactment of cultural and culinary practices, they had to bear the blame of overshadowing the culture of Delhi, resulting in a loss of its exclusive culture. They were accused of replacing the royal Mughlai food of Delhi with bold and punchy tandoori traditions. Faced with hostility, they were constructed as strangers, non-natives, non-autochthonous because they did not belong originally from the very beginning. As scholars like Priya Kumar, Rita Kothari, Nandita Bhavnani have argued, the relinquishment of the pre-partition selves and the relinquishment of the pre-partition linguistic, culinary, and more fluid practices became the condition for their gradual acceptance by local populations. The migrants had to make conscious attempts to adapt to local manners and customs and actively downplay elements of their own identity. Accused of contaminating the high culture of Delhi, the migrants had to, as Anjali Roy notes, wipe off all signifiers, visible signifiers of their ethnicity. This strategy of assimilation came at a cost to the community, which has only now begun to be addressed by partition scholars. This is very relevant for understanding the ways in which the 1947 partition of India, a consequence of the British colonization, continues to haunt and shadow the lives of partition's subsequent generations. Partition, therefore, has to be understood as not an event in the history of India, but as a still evolving process whose long term ramifications and ongoing legacies continue to unfold. Thank you.